Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, VM Lifecycle Management After VMware, Day-to-Day Administration in Private Cloud Director. We appreciate you all taking some of your day to learn about Private Cloud Director and what life looks like in your day-to-day job after a VMware exit. A few programming notes here. After the presentation, or after we're done today, we will send you out the slide deck and the recording so you can hear me say all of this again. And we also have invisible people like me standing by to ask your questions. So we will have a live Q&A at the end, but if you have questions, put them in the Q&A portal, please. We'd rather not use the chat because it's hard to keep track of them. So that's all we ask. Put them in the Q&A portal, keep them coming. There are people here to answer them. Our presenters today are our Platform 9 experts, Damian and Jay. And with that, I will hand it over to Damian.
Thank you, John. Hi, Jay. How are you doing?
Very good, Damian.
Awesome.
Are you ready to get this show on the road here?
Yeah? Indeed, I am. Thank you. Yeah. All right, folks. So first, I'm going to walk through a little bit about who Platform 9 is, why we have Private Cloud Director. I'm going to cover a little bit about what Jay plans to show you in the demo. And then we'll end up wrapping up the webinar with a few closing slides. All right, so why Platform 9? Platform 9 was actually founded by early VMware engineers in 2013. They worked on things like VMware vCloud Director. I believe there was some work on VMware DRS as well. We've been in business for over 10 years. We have over 1 million CPU cores in production and under our management. Throughout our company, we have about 100+ years of combined VMware experience of either working for VMware or with VMware products. We are currently in the process of migrating 40,000 virtual machines from VMware over to Private Cloud Director at a Fortune 150 customer. And our largest customer is actually here in North America, and they have 24,000 hypervisors that are running in production. So that's kind of why Platform 9 and a little bit about who we are. And so Platform 9, our product offering now is called Private Cloud Director. It's actually a combination of two older products that we had, which was a managed OpenStack and a managed Kubernetes product. Now we have them both together. We believe that enterprises are choosing Private Cloud Director because we offer an administrator-friendly, familiar VM management experience that Jay will show you here in a second. That allows you to run virtual machines and containers on the same platform using the same management plane, all controlled through the same API or CLI. We have all of the critical features that virtualization customers need, such as virtual machine high availability. Our version of resource rebalancing is called distributed resource rebalancing, or DRR. We offer live VM migration. We've got distributed virtual switching. We've got software-defined networking. We've got storage operation offloading, and a whole lot more. Private Cloud Director integrates with your existing storage and servers and networking, which means you don't need to go buy new gear to run Private Cloud Director. You don't have to deal with the current exorbitant memory and data storage prices that are out in the market right now. And we believe that we have the best migration experience in the industry with our open source product, vJailbreak, which is purpose-built to migrate VMware virtual machines to Private Cloud Director as quickly as you'd like, with a minimum of risk. In fact, we believe it's a zero-risk migration when you do virtual machine conversions. And we can do that at a cost that is substantially lower than industry standards. And as I said before, we fit into your existing ecosystem. If you've got data storage from Dell or Hitachi or Pure, also known as Everpure, Tentry, HPE, etc. If you do your monitoring through Splunk or Datadog or OTel, if you're using backup providers such as Veeam, Rubrik, Cohesity, Commvault, etc., you can use all of those same things with Private Cloud Director. And we believe that's a pretty strong value proposition. All right, so this is what Jay will be showing us in the demo. Jay's going to walk us through the private cloud director user interface. Just bear in mind that every action that you see within the user interface is also something that can be automated through our API or through a CLI. We won't get into the automation stuff in this webinar. We're planning it for a future one, but I do have some blog posts that are coming out over the next few weeks that are talking specifically about automating private cloud director. So Jay's going to show us virtual machine deployment, including guest OS customization. He's going to show us a little bit about virtual machine management, such as live migration of a VM. Going to talk a little bit about virtual machine leases, which is an option that administrators can set for their workloads. Virtual machine networking with our software-defined networks and routers and layer 3, layer 4 security groups. He's going to talk a little bit about cluster features such as high availability, resource rebalancing, workload pinning, and affinity groups. And then finally, we're going to touch a little bit on monitoring and metrics and how you can export those metrics to your existing metrics platform. So from here, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to throw it to Jay. And while Jay is going through this, I'll be answering some of the questions that are coming in from you all.
Sounds good. Thank you, Damian. Let me start sharing my screen real quick. Let's just make sure you folks can see my desktop here. Give me 1 second. Okay, hopefully you can see this. You should be seeing the
good.
UI. Yep, cool, very good. All right, let me get started. So obviously, folks, today the focus is day 2 ops from a VM management perspective. I'll take you through this in the UI itself. I'm logging into our lab, as you can see. On top, basically, this is the lab URL. This is the same experience you're going to have when you set up your private cloud director environment. And I'm using a SaaS management plane that I'm connecting to. As you can see from a UI perspective, there's a region component as well. So essentially, your infrastructure onboarded into PCD is what I'm going to be walking you through here. Okay, I'm going to use local credentials to log in. Let me get started here. Hopefully, I get the password right. Let's see. Okay. So this is PCD. This is the UI that you'll be interacting with on a day-to-day basis. As Damian mentioned, all the things that you can do here can also be done through APIs, through automation. But let's just walk through the day-to-day stuff from a VM management perspective itself, right? So I'm logged in here as an admin. So I'm going to see infrastructure as well as virtual machines and workloads that I can provision, including Kubernetes as well. So these are all there in the UI itself. But for the most part today, we are going to focus just primarily on the virtual machine side of it, right? So if you think about virtual machines, what are the things that we need to have in place to create a VM and then manage it on a day-to-day basis, right? That's kind of what I'm going to walk you through. First of all, as you can see, I'm logged into a specific tenant, but you can see various VMs that are actually running here. And what are the key things that we need to be able to create a VM? One, for example, you need a place where you can store your OS images itself. PCD actually comes with an image library. And as you can see here, there are pre-built OS images that we've uploaded in here as well. Okay. That includes obviously various appliances, various versions of Linux, different Windows versions. All these images are built in here. And as a part of the typical day-to-day workflow, if you have a custom image that you want to upload here, you can do that as well. Okay. Adding an image itself is pretty straightforward. You can come in here in the UI itself. You can add an image. So there are a couple of different ways you can do this. You can upload it directly from your desktop, or if you have a URL that you want to use to download and pull it in and make it available, you can do that as well. In this case, I'm just going to do a quick upload. I have a few images here. Let me pick the Suras one. It's a tiny little Linux image that I'm uploading. Set it up as a Linux or a Windows VM. You specify the disk format. In this case, we store images as QCOW2 images. So I'm going to pick that. You can also make it public. So there's a concept of multi-tenancy built into PCD. So if I make it public, every single tenant will be able to see this image, right? And then there are other options as far as disabling delete protection and things like that on the image itself. So when I click the add image, this is going to upload it directly in, and now I have that image available in PCD. So if I refresh it, and if I sorted by age, give me 1 second.
While you're doing that, I've got a question from the audience.
Okay.
Could you explain what QCOW2 means?
Okay, QCOW2 is a file format that we use in our case, which is basically a highly efficient file format that's used by KVM to create disk images on the back end.
Is that a proprietary file format?
No, it's an open file format that's actually used, right? So
okay.
And so one of the things to think about when you're looking at PCD as you're transitioning from VMware is that what ecosystem are you moving into, right? The key is you're moving into an open ecosystem with what we provide, which basically means that we are leveraging, KVM on the back end. We are leveraging your existing storage platforms with the appropriate storage driver, which is also an open drivers that are provided by the vendors themselves, right? So you're moving into an ecosystem which is very open, and as a part of that, you'll see components like QCOW2 and other things which are totally open, and there's no lock-in. Okay, all right. So adding an image is easy, and then I can also set properties at the image level, which are kind of important. These are like we set OS type when we actually uploaded it, but these are things that could actually influence how the VM boots up. Things like UEFI boot, right? Specifying SCSI drivers, things like that can be done as a part of the boot process itself. Okay, so that's a quick look at what you would do from a image upload perspective, and then we can spin up VMs with any of these images that are available in this case. Okay, so now I have the image, but then the question is, how do you provide resources? Like, how do you define a vCPU memory that's required for a VM? And one of the approaches that we take is very much like how public cloud providers approach it, right? Have t-shirt sizes or instance types that you would see in the AWS and the Azure world. The same thing exists in the PCD side of it as well, right? So here, what you're basically seeing is what we call as flavors. A flavor is nothing but a combination of vCPU and memory, right? And you can also set properties at the flavor level that can control booting as well. Okay, I can come in here, create a flavor that to define the shape of my VM as I see it. If you don't see a particular VM, flavor previously defined, you can just create your own. Maybe I want a 16 by 64, which may not be here. I can just come in and provide that. Okay, so this basically provides a way to define what kind of an instance type that you're creating, and then basically we'll use this when we go to deploy VMs themselves. So this can also be like you can enable GPUs as a part of that. It can be passed through the various GPUs that you qualified are available right there, right? Or it can also be like a vGPU, and you can define the number of vGPUs. So you have a lot of flexibility in being able to define the flavor as a shape that you'll reuse to create VMs. And I'll go through that again when I get to the VM part of it. There's also a concept of hot plug. So essentially, this is a special type of a flavor where there's a zero vCPU, zero RAM kind of a concept. This would be useful if I don't have a particular shape. I can use this as a default and then define it when I'm creating the VM itself. Okay, so those are some of the options that are available within the flavor itself. Okay, so there are pre-built flavors that you're going to get, and then you'll be out of the box so that you can use that to create your VMs on the fly. Okay, so basically the two things that I covered so far are images and then flavors. Now you need a place where you actually plug the VMs into, so you need networking. So from a network perspective, we already have some predefined networks created. As you'll see a physical network. A physical network can be thought of as your data center VLANs that you want to plug into. PCD also has virtual networks, and then I have a couple of them created here, which is like, these are VXLAN-based networks which are internal to PCD, and it kind of helps you to isolate workloads into their own IP spaces, right, within PCD itself. So we'll be leveraging some of this. This becomes a place where I plug in my VMs to be able to talk to the outside world. Okay, so let's go back here. Sorry, go ahead.
For people coming from VMware, how does this compare to what they would do with a distributed virtual switch in vSphere?
Yes. So one of the things that from a PCD perspective, Damian, you're not going to see a distributed virtual switch that we show, right? So the way I look at it, the construct of a network in the PCD world is basically here. When you come to create a physical network, this is very much like creating a port group from a VMware perspective. You specify a managed network, and here that's where you come in and specify a flat or a VLAN network, and then provide the VLAN ID, right? This basically translates to what that would look like in terms of your network connectivity into your data center top of rack switches, right? So essentially, this is what you would be defining in the PCD world, so that you get that external connectivity with the specific VLAN that you have provisioned on your top of rack switch. Does that help?
Yes, it does. And I see the MTU there for folks that are curious. Yes, that means you can also do jumbo frames as well.
That is correct. Yes. All right. So we have some networks here that are already predefined, and you can create your own networks on the fly. Creating a virtual network is pretty straightforward. You can just come in here, do the same thing that I just did. Give it a name, give any IP space here, and that becomes internal to PCD as well. In this case, I'll probably using one of these two networks to create the VM itself. Okay. So now let's jump into the VM creation workflow. And this kind of ties all the parts and pieces together from a VM management standpoint, and that's a good place to basically start. So I'm going to start with deploying a new VM. Let's give it a name. We have the same concept of a cluster within PCD. So in this case, we have a single cluster. I'm just going to select that particular cluster that I want to deploy it on. So now you have a choice to make, right? How are you going to boot your VM? What I mean by that is there are different ways to create the VM from a disk perspective. One, it can be an image-based VM. An image-based VM, think of it as creating the VM disk on local storage on the hypervisor itself. And as you can see in the warning, when you create something on the local disk, that basically means that there's a challenge with high availability, right? You want it typically on a shared storage platform, so I can do things like vMotion and stuff. So this is typically used for like a dev test where it's very disposable and you're really not concerned about availability. So you can read through this. There is an ephemeral shared storage option, but that'll require a little bit more additional configuration on the back end from a custom blueprint perspective. But typically image-based VMs are used for dev test workloads and ephemeral short-lived VMs where I'm not really concerned about availability.
Hey Jay,
yes.
Not to rush you, but we got 12 or 13 minutes left. So
okay, all right.
Hurry.
So let's create a volume real quick. I'm going to give it a size. And one of the things about PCD is that we interact directly with the backend storage. So here I'm going to specify the disk type that I'm going to create the VM on. I also have the option of controlling what happens to the disk if the VM is deleted. I can reclaim the capacity with that flag being set. Let me create a Ubuntu VM. And this is basically the stuff that's in the image library that we uploaded into. As I go through this, I can add additional disks if I want. I'm going to skip that part. I'm going to have just basically a boot volume. Here, I select the flavor that was already created in this case, right? Select the flavor. From a networking perspective, let's just pick demo virtual net 2, which is already available to us. As you can see, there are a couple of different options here. You can specify the IP as well, but I'm managing the DHCP for this within that network. I'll just select automatic, so I'll get an IP assigned automatically. Okay. So now, I have a few more options. You have the option of, creating multiple VMs within PCD directly here, right? I can go spin up 20 VMs in one shot if I need to. I can specify a key as a part of that. So essentially, if I need to SSH to the VM, it enables that. So I've pre-created a key and I can just inject it into the VM as a part of the VM creation process. You also have the option of specifying affinity and anti-affinity groups as a part of that. These are predefined. We already created some of those already in our environment, but you can create your own affinity and anti-affinity groups as a part of this. I'm just going to skip that for now. Now the question is, how do you customize the VM itself? So you can come in here, you can customize it with a cloud init block, which is basically an YAML file, with which you can specify things like password. You can install packages, you can join domains, you can do all those kinds of things with the cloud init part of it. You can also assign. Yep, go ahead.
Question from the crowd here. What about Windows guest OS customization?
Yeah. So for Windows OS customization, there is an equivalent called cloud-based init. That is a package that gets installed, and the same construct would apply there as well. The only requirement is that you would have to bake that cloud-based init package into that image, and then you can leverage the same constructs that you're seeing here. Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. You can also create security groups. So this is micro-segmentation that I can use to control access to the VM itself as a part of PCD. So who can talk to this VM, which CIDRs, which security groups. It can control that with the security group construct itself. There is also PCD also comes with DRS kind of capability, which we call as DRR, which basically evaluates utilization on the hypervisors themselves to control utilization, right? If a hypervisor is highly utilized, you want to make sure the VMs that there are not impacted. And I want to non-disruptively move those VMs to a different hypervisor. How you migrate them, you can control that with a migration priority, right? So these are basically available here. And with this, you can control the behavior of DRR itself, okay? So with that, I went through a few things. We specified an image, we specified the network, we are creating a disk on the back end, and then now I would just go deploy the virtual machine itself for you, right? So what happens at this point is the VM, it's going to build the compute portion of it, the networking, the storage, all that will basically be created dynamically, and now you'll essentially get an active VM that's available to you, okay? So if you look at this, it is actually provisioned on the demo virtual net that we mentioned. And if I look at the VM on the back end, if I look at volumes, you're actually creating the disk for the VM as well on the back end. So, it's creating it, it's saving it, and then eventually the VM itself will become active, and then we can go in and perform various operations of the VM. While it's building, let me just jump ahead a little bit. Any other questions out there, Damian?
Yeah, I actually wanted to point out VM leasing because I know that's something that wasn't available natively with VMware. Could you show VM leasing under the tenant settings?
Okay, yeah, sounds good. So as I mentioned before, there is a concept of multi-tenancy within PCD. So this is basically grouping users and then how much resources they consume on the back end. So essentially, these are the different tenants that I have. If I go into edit, for example, the dev tenant, you're going to see all the different users, default settings for the tenant. You can see all that within that, okay? But as a part of that, if you see, there's quotas that I can set. You can also manage the lease policy for any VMs that get provisioned within that tenant. So this is a built-in capability that we have. So this could be, in this case, it's a development tenant. What I want to do is when a developer comes in and spins a VM, I'm going to restrict them to 30 days. And after 30 days, I'm going to reclaim the capacity, right? So this policy is actually enabled on this tenant itself. Or, if I don't want to delete it, but leave it out there so they can come in and do their cleanup, do whatever they need on their side, they can do that as well. Or power off the VM. So these are basically set at the tenant level that I can use on the backend itself. Okay. So this is a lease policy that you would set. And then essentially, if I go back to my virtual machine, in this particular case, I don't believe I have a lease policy set, but you will see a column that shows lease expiration, with which I can, basically see when it's going to be reclaimed or when it's going to be powered off, and also you can see the date with that. But you can also see things like, there is a customized lease option that's available. The VM is not leased, so you're not going to be able to do it. But if there was a lease on the particular VM, I can change it, maybe extend my lease so I have it for a few more days and things like that. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Sounds good. So at this point, I have the VM that's available. But let's take a look at this VM itself. What are the kinds of things that I can do with the VM? So all the different power options are available. So you can stop it, reboot it, hard reboot, which is very much like pulling the power from a machine kind of thing. suspending it or pausing it. The one thing that I'd like to point out here is a rescue option. Say you install a driver on the VM and the VM's failing to boot. You can use a rescue image to bring it up, and then you can go and actually look at and fix the issue from a driver perspective, right? So a rescue option is available. So these are some of the standard options that you get out of the box there. From a networking perspective, you have additional things that you can do here as well. Multi-NIC capability, you can expose it to an external network. You can do all these things as a part of that. And then rest of the operations in terms of a VM itself. Hey, I want to do a snapshot. Let's do a snapshot real quick, right?
Just a warning, Jay, 5 minutes, and maybe we can run a little bit over. Anybody who has to drop off, you will get the recording sent to you via email.
Okay. Yeah, I have a guest agent that is supposed to be talking to this, so it looks like it's kind of pausing on that. Let me pick a different VM real quick. Demo, let's... snapshot. So when I do a snapshot, what you're also going to get is a snapshot of this particular VM, and if it has any disk associated with that, you can see that as well. So we view snapshots as a way to spin up a VM from, so you're going to see it in a different location. So in here, you basically see that the VM snapshot I just created is available right there, okay? Corresponding to that, there's also a volume snapshot. There's a disk associated with that. So we automatically snap the VM disk on the backend, which could be on a backend storage array, your external storage array where a snapshot would be created, reflecting that disk image as well. Okay. Now, once I have these available, I can spin up VMs from those snapshots itself. So those kinds of capabilities are available. And coming in here again, I know we can do things like a live migration of a VM, a rebuild of a VM. All these things can basically be performed right here within the UI itself. Okay, let me pause there and see if there are any questions.
Yeah, there's a question about snapshots. Is that an application consistent or a crash consistent snapshot?
Yeah, so the key is it's a crash consistent snapshot out of the box. But there is the first thing that you saw with the demo VM where it paused me, there is a guest agent option with which you can create application consistent snapshots within the OS itself. There are hooks that are available to make that an application consistent snapshot. Okay, but by default, if you don't have the guest agent deployed, it'll be a crash consistent snapshot. Okay. So we covered a lot of different elements. So now that I have the VM available, I can go into a console as well. Let me open the console here. Let's connect in. Hope I got the password right. Oh, yes, cool. So if you say the IP address that we assigned, hopefully everybody can see this. You have that. Let's try to ping out from here. I'm not able to ping out because I created it on a virtual network that's actually isolated completely. So the key is now, if I want to provide access to this particular VM externally, let me... Okay. Let's go here. Let's create a... So it's the concept of a virtual router. We're going to try to connect it up to create a new router, and then we'll connect this particular VM network to that router as well. Okay. So this is my external network, which is my data center VLAN that I'm connecting out to. And then I'm also adding my virtual net 2 where this is deployed as a part of that. So I'm creating a router with that. So it should create this. The only thing that I want to do is basically need to be able to, there we go. So we are able to ping out because now I have an external path out through that virtual router itself. So pretty straightforward in terms of doing software-defined networking as well as a part of this. So very quickly, the things that we saw today basically were creating a virtual machine. We created a virtual network. We placed the VM on a virtual network. And then we created a virtual router, and we are able to communicate out from the virtual over the virtual network into the outside world as well. Okay. So with that, let me do one more thing. So from a day to ops perspective, things are not complete if you don't look at monitoring, right? So there is monitoring built into PCD as well. So let me close the right view. Let's jump back here. So we have an option where we have built in Grafana. So we are collecting metrics from the hypervisors themselves. It collects metrics both on the VMs that are running on a hypervisor as well as the hypervisor level metrics itself. And then it does a remote write, and we retain that for 2 weeks within PCD. So as you can see, if I look at this, these are resource utilization elements that you can see from a cluster perspective, infrastructure standpoint. I can also look at it from a cluster host standpoint. I can go in, I can look at the virtual machines that are running on a particular host. I can also look at the resource utilization on that. So these are things that we provide, both allocation, usage, and the real-time view from a CPU memory standpoint. Within the UI itself, you can also go to virtual machines, right? And you can look at specific VMs from a resource utilization standpoint. Okay, so it gives you an idea of some of the metrics that are available for you to consume directly in the UI itself. But then if I want to go drill down and I want to build my own dashboards on it, I have an option of going into the Grafana side of things, where we give you a hosted Grafana option with which I can spin it up. And it essentially takes you into a Grafana that we host and we make available. The cool thing about this is what it gives you is pre-built dashboards that are available, but you also get the raw metrics with which you can build your own dashboards. So here, for example, if I look at a pre-built dashboard that we have, it shows you things like hypervisor memory usage, how many hypervisors I have. So the metrics that you want to see typically from a utilization perspective are all available right here. Okay, and I can also change the time interval to see over a longer duration if I need to, and I get a better view of what is going on in the backend from a hypervisor standpoint. Let me pause there. John, how are we doing on time?
We're about a minute over, maybe 2. So.
Okay, let me just wrap this up real quick, and then we can take any additional questions. So if I want to look at the CPU and memory usage from a VM perspective, I can do that as well. How many VMs are running, and then it gives you these are pre-built dashboard, but all these metrics are available to you with which you can drill down. Let me give you another example of a dashboard that we built on top of the metrics that are available. It could be something as simple as I just want to get an environment overview on what's going on, right? So this basically gives you what's going on from a particular VM. If I need to drill down, I can go look at that, what it's doing from a CPU memory network standpoint. So you have the capability of building drill downs as a part of this as well. Okay. Finally, from a metrics exploration standpoint, if you look at this, let me just show you what metrics are available. So at a VM level, if I just type in VM underscore, it'll show you all the VM level metrics that we expose from PCD. Or if it is hypervisor level, I can just do hypervisor underscore and then essentially see all this. And from this, you can create your own dashboards. You can publish them. You can share it with others, and you can also do things like an alerting based on utilization on it. Okay. All right. Let me pause. Any questions?
That was great, Jay. Thank you very much. There are a few questions, but we have been handling them, within the Q&A. So thank you very much. I know that we're running low on time, John. Do we have a few more minutes for some closing slides?
Yeah, I mean, we're a little over, but again, let's get it on, and we'll have it on the recording, and people can watch it at their leisure if they have to drop off now.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Then
I'm going to transition over to Damian. I just stopped sharing. So
yep. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So in marketing, this is what we call a call to action. So everything that you saw Jay do within Private Cloud Director, you also have the opportunity to do in your own sandbox lab during our hands-on labs. This is something that myself and a few other folks do every month. We have 2 coming up. This month, we've got one focused on the Americas time zone on April 14th at 9 a.m. Pacific, and a second one on April 15th focused on EMEA time zones at 2 p.m. British summertime. And if you'd like, here are the QR codes that you can use. You can scan it with your phone. That'll take you directly to the Hands-On Labs registration link. Or you can also scan the Contact Us, and you can reach out to us, and we'll get in touch and talk with you about moving away from VMware. That's all I had. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Jay, Damian. For everyone that's hung out with us, we appreciate it. If you still have some questions, we're working through the queue. We will hang out until security comes and throws us out, but we will go silent. So if you have any more questions, put them in the Q&A. If not, you will get this recording and the slide deck in the email. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, folks.